right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 71 on my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. And we are going to start getting into some of the details on the Ice Age. And even though the Ice Age is kind of sort of a separate topic in itself, it happens right at the end of the flood. And it's not mentioned in the Bible, but you can look on the planet and see that there was an ice age. Something happened in the past that caused an ice age. We're going to look at that, some of the theories on that. We're going to look at the secular side and we're going to look at the biblical side, or the secular worldview and the biblical worldview. We're going to look at both of those. And so that'll give you a little idea on what's going on. And hopefully by the end of this whole topic of the Ice Age, you'll have a good understanding about it, and you can kind of take some of the resources that I'm giving you and further your own research and your own study yourself. And so, but both sides, whether it was secular or biblical worldview, they do agree that yes, there was an Ice Age. There was an Ice Age. And so, when did it happen? How many it was is debate. Is open for debate. And so, but I'm going to give you kind of a brief summation on both sides on what they say. Okay? If you'll notice on the screen here, this is that chart that I keep adding to, adding on. And, but this is one that I put together, guys. And believe me, it did not start off with all this on here. It kind of just grew and grew as I researched and put more things together. And but this is a good chart to overview, especially evolution, where it all came from, for the most part. And if you'll notice right there on Hutton, and you go down 1795, go to the left of the picture, and you'll see Hutton go down 1795, and he wrote the theory. Notice that, guys, the theory of the earth, the theory. And that's when they started putting in the geologic long ages of time and all that stuff. Uniformitarianism first got started. And so now he didn't coin the term. That was done by that guy named Whewell. It's Whewell. If you see 1832, just go straight down and you'll see him, Whewell. The term uniformitarianism was introduced by him. And then Lyell built upon evolution from Hutton. He built on the uniformitarian view from Hutton. And he made quite a interesting little statement. He said he wanted to free the science from Moses. That's basically saying he wanted to get rid of God. And then Darwin, I'm not putting Owen in there because Owen just coined the term dinosaur. So everything was beginning in this area, even the whole dinosaur, the whole there was the what they call the dinosaur rush was in the 1800s, or towards the latter end of the 1800s. They had this whole dinosaur rush thing where people were just really starting to learn about dinosaurs and stuff, even though they had been dug up in previous areas where they have found bones and stuff like that. They supposedly dinosaurs were first discovered as early as 1676, but around the 1800s is when they really started becoming, I guess you could say, more public knowledge. I guess you would call it that. And again, they weren't called dinosaur until Owen around 1840, 1842. That's when people started using the term dinosaur, but it wasn't even in the dictionary. Just like the dictionary that I have, I believe it's 1873 dictionary. It's a Webster's dictionary, and it still does not have the word dinosaur in it. So it took a while for them to actually start using that word dinosaur. What were they called before then? Who knows? And so they were given names. They were given actually names, but they weren't called dinosaurs. They didn't call them dinosaurs until the later, mid to later 1800s. But right around now I found two dates, 1824 and 1840. two different dates that I was given when Louis Agassiz first theorized the Ice Age. The Ice Age. It's either 1824 or 1840. Two different dates that I got. At about a 16-year difference, but right around that time period. Right around that time period is when he first theorized the Ice Age. And so now, as far as land coverage, now you'll notice this map here. Now, the about 30% of the land is what has been looked at as actually being covered. 30% of the landmass during the Ice Age. And again, we're going to look into some other things about the evolution side of it. But if you'll notice there, I put additional glacial activity. And the reason why I added this in, this came from Immanuel Velikovsky's Earth in Upheaval. The little white dots, if you see some white dots, that's what's additional glacial activity that I learned about from his book, Earth in Upheaval, and that's pages 36 to 37 if you guys want to check it out. I think the Himalayan foothills, I believe that came from Immanuel Velikovsky's Earth in Upheaval also. And then the peninsular India within 20 degrees of the equator, I believe that came from it also. And then you got the white dots of Madagascar, and then practically all of the all of southern Africa, up to at least 20 degrees south of the equator there. I believe that came from Earth in Upheaval also, and then Argentina, and then British Guyana, I believe that's how that's pronounced. And so those are other areas. And then, of course, all the white areas that you see, of course, those were what has been traditionally stated that they were covered by the Ice Age also, glacial activity and stuff like that. And so, again, if you want to learn more about that, Earth in Upheaval is a fantastic book, awesome book. It is on audiobook for you guys that want to check that out. I've got that one and I think two others that he did. And so, but this right here is the geologic time scale. And so it is absolutely hogwash. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, there is no millions of years. There is no millions of years. All this was brought up by Hutton and his crew. And so they conjured this thing up because they have to have millions of years to get life forms to evolve. It's just as simple as that, which they have no evidence of that also. Now, the area called the Pleistocene, well, I'm just going to go ahead and give you the evolutionary side of it. The area called the Pleistocene means the most recent, and that is considered the Ice Age. By evolutionary thinking, that is the Ice Age. They dated it at 1.6 or 2.6 million years to 10,000 years before the present time. And so, by evolutionary thinking, that is what they state. Now, there are 5 main Ice Age periods. The uniformitarian view is slow and gradual. You want to anytime you hear the word uniformitarian or you hear me say uniformitarian, you want to think slow and gradual. Slow and gradual. Though I will state that I have talked to these individuals or had communication with these individuals through my YouTube channel, and they will constantly say they're always changing. Well, we don't believe that anymore. Well, we still don't believe it anymore. It doesn't matter. They still hold on to the long ages of time, millions and millions of years. And so it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And so, but those areas that you see there, the geologic period, they got Pleistocene and then late Paleozoic, late Ordovician, and then late Precambrian and mid-Precambrian. Those 4 areas there, they didn't happen. That's myth. It's made up. And that's your millions and millions of years of age. Now, the Pleistocene, as far as the approximate secular age, that's hogwash. But that is the only one. That is the only one that would be the closest as far as matching the biblical age, as far as 45 to 3,800 years ago. That is when that happened. You just take Pleistocene, just put Ice Age instead of Pleistocene, and it happened as far as the time period for the biblical worldview would be around 4,500 to 3,800 years. And so, but the secular worldview, when it comes to ice ages, they say about 520 to 950 million years ago, it is believed that the entire Earth was covered at least twice during the late Precambrian. They call it the snowball Earth. The snowball Earth. Again, that is the evolutionary side. But in a nutshell, the average depth of the ice over much is estimated to have been 2,300 feet. And that is the northern hemisphere. If you notice this chart here, the average depth of ice, mostly being in Antarctica in the southern hemisphere, is estimated to have been around 3,900 feet. Again, that is the southern hemisphere. You're going to see this chart again. I just thought it would be good to bring it towards the top, the beginning of this, and show this. But after peak accumulation, which was 30% of the Earth's land, meltback would have been about 33 feet per year along the edges and the slower in the interior. And so, and this right here, these estimates that you're seeing right here was by Michael Ord. So this would be more, this would fall along more in the biblical time, the biblical worldview for this one here. Now let's jump back to the secular worldview. And in the 1960s, there were over 60 theories, guys. 60 theories on what caused the Ice Age. No one even thought about an ice age until it was first proposed in 1824, and we went over that at the beginning. Used to be taught that there were 4 ice ages. Now it's 30 ice ages that have happened over 2.5 million years. They said there was a glacial phase, which was a cooling time, which was 90,000 years, and then an interglacial phase, which is a warmer time for 100,000 years. Greenland's ice sheet formed several million years ago. Antarctica's ice sheet started forming 40 million years ago. It has reached its peak and has been at equilibrium for 15 million years. And this is right here. The next one is about Louis Agassiz, who was a young Swiss naturalist. In 1840, published his theory regarding the inception and termination of the Ice Age. Now that's where I got that other date of 1840 instead of 1824. But anyway, somewhere in that 16-year period, he theorized this. But at any rate, he regarded the inception and termination of the Ice Age as catastrophic events. He expressed the belief that repeated global catastrophes were accompanied by a fall in temperature of the globe and its atmosphere, and that glacial ages, of which the Earth experienced more than one, were terminated each time by renewed igneous volcanic activity in the interior of the Earth. Now, as far as this one here, this chart here was from Walt Brown's book, In the Beginning. Again, guys, you can get this online in PDF form. Now, I will say this. The last video that I did, before this one, I put a link in the description. And guys, when I was looking through that, it looks like they make that PDF form, that PDF book view that you can view online for free. It looked like it. Now, I didn't go a lot of digging into that, but it looked like you can view that book for free online. I don't know if you can download it. I think there's a cost associated with it, but when I went to that link that I gave you, it showed it. It showed the book, and I was going through several pages of it right there online. And so you might want to check that out. Of course, I personally wanted a copy of it that way. If I don't have the internet, I'm not always on the internet when I do my research. And so I just wanted a copy for myself. And so, and plus I wanted to, encourage and support that ministry. But at any rate, if you'll notice this chart here, he gives a breakdown. He gives a breakdown from when the flood begins all the way until the end, pretty much the end of the ice age, I guess you would call it. But in this chart here, he shows the fountain of the great deep breaking up, and then you'll see the flood phase. Now that flood phase is only just a few months. Believe it or not, but the waters were only on the earth actually doing their thing only for about 5 months. It says in Genesis 7:24, 150 days, which was 150 days, which was 5 months, the waters prevailed upon the earth. And then in Genesis 8:3, the end of the 50 days, 150 days, the waters decreased. So they were only on the earth for about 5 months. Now we're going to talk about exactly how long they were in that ark, which was exactly just a little over a year. But for all types of reasons, and we're going to go through that later in the presentation. But again, the waters were only on the planet doing their thing, doing what the Lord wanted for 5 months. At the end of the 5 months, they were decreasing. But right at the end of, he has a continental drift phase, which happened about a day. It took about a day for it. And then the ice age begins right after that. And that's going to be, supposedly the deaths of the mammoths. He's got that the deaths of the mammoths happened right at the beginning of the flood there. And so now Michael Ord is going to be a little bit different on his. Michael Ord, if you notice at the bottom, this is it's the same chart. I'm just went ahead and used the same chart. And but Michael Ord says that the Ice Age timeline is estimated to have lasted 700 years after the flood. And so he's got the same match there. And so he's matching with what appears to be Dr. Brown's chart here. And but he's got 500 years of accumulation of ice and then 200 years of meltback, which would give it a 700 year period. And he states, though, that the deaths of the mammoths were during that meltback period. Something happened at that time, guys. Something happened pretty catastrophic during that time that caused those mammoths to die. And some of them, guys, were found frozen standing up. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that later. But I just thought I'd throw that in this chart here. Now, it appears that both of these guys agree on when the flood started, when the Ice Age started, but as far as the deaths of the mammoths, they don't agree. Now, there are some people, some creationists, that believe that the Ice Age happened right towards the beginning of the flood, right? That the Ice Age caused the flood. And so there are those that do believe that. And so I don't have much on that. They just state that it's a different time period. Not by a whole lot, as far as time that is. But instead of the Ice Age happening at the end of the flood, they said it happened at the beginning of the flood. And so, for what it's worth, that's what it is. Now, for me on my charts, if you'll notice on my chart here, here's one that I have. I always say I follow along with Michael Ord. I believe he knows what he's talking about. The man's been studying enough. He's a meteorologist. He's got the credentials. This is all this guy studies is the Ice Age. That's all he studies. For the most part, when it comes to the biblical timeline of the Ice Age, it's really not that big a deal. You got some that believe it happened right at the end, right at the beginning of the flood, and then you got some that say it happened right at the end of the flood. And so if there's only like a year difference, and so for what it's worth. And so some say that the mammoths died out at the beginning of the flood. Some say the mammoths died out at the end of the Ice Age, or towards the end of the Ice Age, the mammoths died out. And so, for what it's worth, To me, it's not nearly as confusing as the evolutionary side of it, which says there could be as many as 60 theories on what caused the ice age. And so, but at any rate, the creationist scientists do agree that yes, there was an ice age. But anyway, we're going to continue on the next video and go through some of this and some of the wild aspects of it, what caused it, what do you need to have an ice age, and some of the things that they have found. But you guys take care. I love you, and I hope the Lord blesses you real good. Bye-bye.